Here's our agenda for this evening. We'll do a quick overview of CI3T and then talk about some resources and ideas to help you close out the year and make plans for revising your CI3T implementation manual for next year and establish professional learning goals, as well as we'll just wrap up the year with you and talk about moving forward and some exciting offerings that we have coming soon out of some research projects. So let's jump right in. I want to, of course, welcome you to being here. If this is your first one, great to see you. And we appreciate you and your commitment to supporting all students' multiple needs across multiple domains of academic behavior and social skills. And that's especially important these days because less than 1% currently, and for many years now, it's been half of 1% of students are identified with an emotional disturbance under the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, the special education law. And that half of 1% receives services for those challenges, whereas up to 20% of students have a mild or a moderate form of an emotional behavioral disorder. And most often don't receive special education supports, which means they're in our general education classrooms. And so we need to empower our teachers with the skills and strategies to be able to support all students across the day rather than feeling like, I don't know what to do, so I'm going to kick you out to the office. Instead, that's what Project Empower is about, giving the skills and strategies to support all students. And that mainly requires a shift to a systems level thinking, a shift to a prevention, proactive focus rather than a reactive mindset where we wait for students to get in trouble academically, behaviorally, or socially, and then react to that. We're trying to get in front of that and prevent those challenges, as well as to respond respectfully when challenging behaviors and academic risk occurs. We respond respectfully. With CI3T, we are growing, as of course, and it started in 1996 in Southern California. Certain states have gone CI3T, and more states join our research partnerships in these very respectful collaborations that we enjoy forming. So if you're interested in any more or building your CI3T model, reach out to any of us on this call tonight, or go to the Contact Us page of ci3t.org, and we can connect you with people who are CI3T trainers, as well as give you more information about those trainers and coaches calls to get additional support. But we continue to expand our network and our research opportunities. So to give you an overview of CI3T in case it's new to you, or how is it different from other multi-tiered systems of support, there are a few areas. And we, of course, have the triangle that's pretty ubiquitous, and you see how we've got our tiers. And the tiers of increasing support. So we start with tier 1 just by virtue of showing up at school. Everybody gets high quality instruction across the 3 domains you see on the bottom: academics, behavioral, and social. So with academics, we choose curricula based on evidence and implement them with integrity and monitor that integrity to ensure they're being delivered as designed rather than every teacher doing their own thing to teach reading. We have a validated reading curriculum that we know works, and it's going to shift our students' reading scores in the desired direction when we implement it as designed. And that's not going to work for all students. So we've got tier 2 and tier 3 supports for those who need more than what's offered at tier 1. With the behavior domain, we have PBIS at tier 1 to, just like academics, we teach all students. These are the behavioral expectations and give them time to practice and engage in those expectations and to reinforce those behaviors when they're observed, so they're more likely to continue into the future. That way we're promoting and reinforcing the pro-social behaviors we want to see more of, and we're able to then ignore and put on extinction the minor challenging behaviors because we're giving all the attention that's reinforcing to the behaviors we want to see happen more often. Similarly, in the social skills domain or social emotional learning or social emotional well-being, all the different names it goes by, including character education, a validated curricula is chosen and taught to all students at tier 1 with plans for tier 2 and tier 3 supports for those who need an extra dosage or more specialized support. But importantly, it's all students, not just those students who are challenged socially. That way, when we teach students who do have those challenges, everybody's familiar with the language that we're using and is familiar with what's happening when me as a student, if I come up to Wendy and say, that looks like fun, can I play? She knows it's from the social skills lessons that we just had about inclusion and perspective taking. And rather than thinking I'm weird, she will say, sure, come on, join our group. All of these things are outlined in a CI3T implementation manual that schools have. Within those manuals, all the roles and responsibilities are clearly outlined for the three domains: academics, behavior, and social. So, for example, in the academics, we not only name the academic curricula for reading and writing and math that's being taught by all the teachers, like at elementary level. Some of the curricula used at middle and high school can be named as well. But you'll also see things like 7 low intensity strategies that can be used to not only increase academic engagement, but prevent and reduce challenging behaviors. In the middle column for behavior, it talks about how we use positive behavioral interventions and supports, or PBIS, to prevent challenging behaviors. But also, challenging behaviors are going to occur. So we outlined that we need to follow the reactive plan. And in other pages, we typically see a flow chart that helps teachers know what to do, what behaviors are classroom managed and which ones need to be office managed, and what process to go through, filling out what paperwork to support students when they have those challenging behaviors that do occur. In the social skills column, we name the social skills curriculum and the dosage that we deliver it, and then we monitor it. Is it being implemented by all teachers? Are they giving it the right amount of minutes on the right amount of days? Because each curriculum, whichever one is chosen, and there's many out there, will have a different map for how to implement it and what level you're going to implement it at, whether it's a daily lesson or a weekly lesson, or some programs at high school may be a monthly lesson. So whatever the curriculum authors recommend, that's what we want to make sure we're following, but we have to document it and track it so we can say to families that we have provided this high quality instruction in all of these domains at tier 1, and that's how we know your child may need more for tier 2 or tier 3, because we've collected these data that we know it's actually happening. So in addition to these roles and responsibilities, the manual outlines procedures for teaching the plan to all the different stakeholders, to reinforcing the plan, including how do we reinforce adults for implementing the plan as designed, and then how do we monitor the plan? And that's a key piece, because we need to know, is it being implemented as designed, to what degree, and what do people think about it, social validity? Because if they believe in it and support it and understand it, understand the why behind it, then they're more likely to implement it as designed. A hallmark of CI3T is an integrated lesson plan. So we heard me talk about those domains: academics, behavior, and social, and it's not separate siloed efforts throughout the day in my lesson plans. When I teach my academic core, I've got my standards that I'm addressing, but I'm also thinking about how can I integrate the social skills instruction that I've been working on? What social skills do I need to pre-correct for and remind students for and reference during the lesson? And up on the top right, you see the 7 low intensity strategies mentioned. So as I'm planning my lessons, where can I very intentionally and purposefully think about opportunities to respond that I'm going to offer? And what behavior specific praise might I use for some challenging behaviors that typically happen, like with math and individual whiteboards? I know we can get into some trouble with those, so I'm going to use pre-correction for that. And then behavior specific praise when they're using them correctly as a form of opportunities to respond, as well as those other strategies there. You can find that integrated lesson plan template. Currently, it's on our COVID page. That's when we started making it available to everybody. And our website may get redesigned in the future, but for now, it's on that COVID page. So check there, download that template. We know that all of these efforts that we do at tier 1 with high quality instruction and monitoring treatment integrity aren't going to work for everybody. We expect 80 to 90% of students to have their needs met when we do that with high integrity, but some students are going to need more. So we have Tier 2 intervention grids. We expect 10 to 15% of students to need those, and we use data collected from school-wide processes to connect students to those. And some students, 1 to 5%, are going to need even more. So we've got our Tier 3 supports as well. And we don't need a ton of Tier 3 interventions. We just need a few that we know work, such as functional assessment-based interventions, which are so highly customized to our students' needs based on what is the function of the behavior, including academic behaviors and academic enablers. As I mentioned, we look at data. So we support data dashboards. So we have our behavior data, some behavior screening, side-by-side academic screening and benchmarking data, side-by-side discipline referral data, attendance data, maybe nurses visits, test scores for state and district tests, as much data as we can get side by side, so we can look at a whole picture of the student when we are analyzing who needs more, rather than making decisions based on one data source only. So we look at everything together, and then we may look at the whole class as well. So if this was my classroom and I saw this much yellow and red color representing the moderate and high risk in these different areas, rather than trying to connect all of these students to tier two and tier three supports, that just wouldn't be feasible nor efficient and probably not effective. I would look at my teaching. I might revisit, do I have my basic classroom management in place? If I do, hopefully I do, then maybe I need to focus more on those low intensity strategies and integrating them fully into my day-to-day teaching throughout the day, all day long, to improve how I'm teaching. And then most of those students' needs will more likely be met with these low intensity strategies in place. You can find more about those again on that professional learning tab. We've got these accordions for each of these 7 strategies and more that you can expand. And once you do, you'll see a PowerPoint, you'll see an introduction, you'll see intervention grids that can be copied into your school's intervention grids. And one of the things that I love about developing and getting practice and coaching teachers to implement these low intensity strategies is, after a while, you can find out, do a little survey, who are the experts in your building? You don't need to rely on outside experts to come and offer trainings, which is a great idea too, but you might have them in your building. So look first and identify them. We have one high school from a past project that sent us a list, like, here's all the people who are experts in these 7 strategies that our teachers now know and can go observe and get some ideas or ask to come observe themselves and get feedback. So the experts are in your building if you reach out and do a survey and find out to support those low intensity strategies, as well as the resources on that professional learning tab to read more about each one, become experts yourselves, get some practice, and then build a library, build a tiered intervention library where you can refer all of your faculty and even your staff to use these strategies, like active supervision. We want that out on the playground, out on the quad, whatever your recess time and outdoor time is. We want all the adults out there to use active supervision and behavior specific praise for those behaviors, including the lunchroom and cafeteria staff and custodians and bus drivers. Everybody should have access and knowledge about these strategies that they can use throughout the day. Another hallmark is how we monitor CI3T data, looking at these 3 core components. You heard me mention behavior and academic screenings on the bottom. We collect those 3 times a year, fall, winter, and spring. We also collect social validity and treatment integrity data twice a year, fall and spring. And that means when we look at what those are, treatment integrity is, to what degree is the plan being implemented as designed? What percentage of elements are in place as intended? And social validity is, what do people think about the plan's goals, procedures, and outcomes? And we know social validity can predict treatment integrity. If I understand the why and have high ratings in my belief in the plan, I'm more likely to implement it. So we collect those data to get a snapshot twice a year. How is the plan working and what do people think of the plan? Because then I can look at the data and make some changes to the plan if I've got some good ideas and feedback, or if there's some information that I just need to highlight again or reteach to the staff so they understand why we do it. Maybe it's something I can't change, or behavior science shows us that we should keep, but I need to readdress with the faculty and staff so they understand why, so that when they do, they're more likely to implement it as designed. So I might look at my treatment integrity reports and direct observation if we're doing that, as these are components of CI3T, along with social validity, but focusing here on treatment integrity. I might get this report, and of these items, I might see, this is the social validity item here, that people said the primary plans, monitoring procedures are manageable. And if I needed to, if that number were lowered, here it's on a scale of 1 to 6, with my leadership team, I might think, well, what changes can we make to our monitoring procedures to make them more feasible, to make it easier for teachers to do, or even the staff who's doing it, the surveys, the data collection? What are we doing and how can we improve that based on those data from that social validity? Looking at another item here, if I were to see that the data that we're getting is effective and efficient and sufficient to evaluate the plan, I want to make sure that I've distributed those data back to faculty and staff, those that are taking the time to complete the surveys or who were observed through direct observation for what components of the plan are they putting in place. They need to see those data. That's inspiring, it's reminding, it's motivating, all the things that looking at the data remind me that it was worthwhile, worth my time to complete those surveys. And I want to know how it turned out for the whole school. And seeing where we're at can be great. Let's keep going, doing the great things we're doing. Or if we're not quite where I want to be, then it could be motivating to make some improvements or adjustments as well. Looking at direct observation, I might see something for our whole school that we had a low rating overall for integrating social skills into observed lesson plannings. So then as a team, I might remind the full faculty at our next meeting that we've got these integrated lesson plans. Let's be sure to use them. If you need coaching on them or support, here's who you can contact or invite to come observe and give feedback, or maybe we'll just add it to our next walkthroughs and give you some feedback, whatever the situation is at your school for providing those supports. The tiered fidelity inventory, or TFI, is another treatment integrity measure. This is specific to the PBIS component. So teams fill this out twice a year, including a walkthrough component, and they get the data for just the behavior of how we're doing at each tier and can make changes based on that as well.
So, David did a really good job of overviewing all the different supports and tiers that we have within our CI3T model of prevention. And, as we're coming around to this time of the year, this is where we begin to say, all right, we've had quite a year. We've got all these practices we're implementing. We're looking at evidence-based practices. We're looking at data. And now is the time of the year, honestly, to sit back, relax, take a load off, enjoy the peace and quiet. And I'm just kidding. Actually, as we're looking towards the end of the year, it's really a time that folks are like, I'm kind of just holding on right now. I'm just holding on to May 20 or June 3 or whatever your last day of school is. It can be kind of one of those times of the year. And, I think that folks may have the notion that, it's just towards the end, let's just kind of get through these things. And maybe we don't need to worry so much about some of the CI3T things that we're doing and all the PBIS and the behavior supports and all that. But we encourage you to think about it instead of, taking things off of the plate. It's more like you're using what's on the plate to make your life easier for you. It's using those resources so that way you do have a successful conclusion to your school year. So we're thinking about closing out the school year. We're thinking more about leaning into these supports, ensuring that we have these things in place and that they're implemented with fidelity and that we're still getting the most out of our time with our kids. I tell my undergrads, when you go out into the field, you're only going to have these kids for 168 days a year. That sounds like a lot to them, but we know that's not a lot of time for them, so we got to make every minute count. Time is always against us. So, across the tiers, we want to think about what we're doing to help kids, in academics, behavior, social, emotional well-being. How are we supporting these kids and how are we continuing to lean into these supports, across the tiers? And in thinking about our CI3T plan, we want to make sure that we're continuing to lean into those supports. As kids tend to get a little bit, I think the technical term is squirrely. I might also accept ornery, but as you're kind of getting a little squirrely towards the end of the year, one way to help combat that is to lean into some of those strategies that help to increase active engagement. Things like using instructional choice, things like using behavior-specific praise at an increased rate. Like David said, increasing your rates of active supervision, helping to lean into those things is going to help create a more engaging environment for kids. And as kids are more engaged with the material, they're going to be less likely to engage in some of those distracting, acting out types of behaviors. Same thing with our PBIS framework within CI3T. We want to continue to praise students for meeting expectations, continue to reinforce students with behavior-specific praise and tokens and tickets that they can exchange later on. Ensure that we're using our reactive plan effectively, so that way when things are happening, we can respond in a way that's effective and going to meet their needs, and it's going to help us as well. And we still got time towards the end of the year that we can continue to teach our social emotional curriculum. I think it's such a gift that schools are implementing this at tier 1, so that way they can remind kids that, hey, things can get rough sometimes, but you know what? We have some tools in place that we're sharing with you about how to regulate your own emotions, how to demonstrate empathy with your friends, how to get through certain situations in a way that's emotionally healthy. And I think that's just really important for folks and for kids to kind of see and develop and practice those skills of good social emotional well-being. And of course, procedures for teaching, and we want to continue to teach the plan to kids and reteach, continue to do our reinforcing with kids, and continue to look at the ways that we monitor our plan moving forward to make sure kids are learning in safe and respectful environments. And again, if kiddos are experiencing an increased rate of squirreliness, we can make sure that we're approaching that with our the kind of the skills and the procedures that we've outlined in our CI3T implementation manual. That is to say, our reactive plan. That when we face those challenges, we have sort of a preset decision tree that we can go down to say, okay, what do I do first? Make sure that we're logging those things correctly and all that. And luckily for us, research suggests that the best predictor of a child's future behavior, whether it will increase or decrease in severity, is whether the way that the adult first reacts to it, which is why the first step of the 6-step instructional approach to dealing with challenging behavior is, first things first, show empathy. Because you don't want to come in hot with someone else who's having a rough day, because that's not going to help the situation. It's going to make it worse. So, we want to make sure that towards the end of the year that our educators, our teachers, that we understand that, okay, when we do come up with challenging behaviors, we want to make sure that we're showing empathy, that we're maintaining the flow of instruction for kids, that when we're doing that, we're acknowledging other students who are meeting expectations that we have set out. And when the time comes, we can come back to that kiddo, reteach and redirect the expected behavior, give them the time and space to digest those words and to use some of those behavioral skills, those social emotional skills that they've been hearing and working on, and then recognize and reinforce when those things do happen. And when we do come up against minor and major behavior infractions, there's a decision tree for what that looks like. And so, responding to these behaviors is going to be something that we're really going to want to hone in on to ensure that the end of the year is going to be successful. And, it's also a great opportunity to make sure that we've got a robust reinforcement system in place for our kids. So making sure that we've got our expectations in place, and then when kids are meeting them, that we're making sure that we're having a healthy rate of reinforcement for kids, is when kids are showing us that they're being respectful, being responsible, and giving best effort, especially at this time of year. We want to reinforce that so it continues to happen at this time of year. And so handing out tickets and making sure that it's paired with behavior specific praise, and making sure that kids have access to the reinforcement plans that you have developed. And it might be a good time to take a moment and stop and say, okay, do we have a reward system in place that kids are going to buy into? And part of doing that is making sure that you have sort of a variety of reinforcers. Hold on, where's my laser pointer? Okay, here we go. So, I'm half a teacher without my laser pointer. So, what you want to consider for kids is, all right, when we're talking about reinforcement, we want to have options for kids to access things and also to avoid certain things. And we want them to think about that in terms of social experiences, activities, tangibles, and sensory types of activities. So, we want people to be able to get access to certain social activities, like, maybe hanging out with friends at some point, or maybe avoid those things. Maybe kids might want to do some work in the library instead of in the classroom, or they want to get access to a certain tangible or certain activity, or maybe avoid something. Or some types of sensory activities, like, maybe opening up the library early in the day so kids can get access to a quiet environment. Maybe that's something they want to do. But thinking about this in terms of positive reinforcement and sort of negative reinforcement. So what are we getting access to? What are we avoiding? Things like avoiding the lunch line would be a nice reinforcement. Or if we're at a high school, avoiding that long walk from the way back of the parking lot, having a nice little spot up front. That could be a nice little piece of negative reinforcement. So it's all about just kind of having a variety that kids can have access to, and it appeals to a larger amount of students here. So again, this kind of goes towards continuing to build the fluency and skill base and knowledge set of the school community. Is that as we continue to lean into these different types of supports, we're also understanding that, we need to make sure that people have access to the knowledge and the training to actually do these things well. So, we recommend, compiling, a set of resources that folks can access easily. That if you want to learn more about, like, okay, this whole active supervision thing, am I just looking like, what is that? You can actually go to the PowerPoint, and like pull it up and check out what exactly that is. And David pointed this out before, but we'll show it again, that we've got parts on our website that you can download these resources and kind of store in a shared space. Things like we've got like some books that we have that cover some of these topics. Call this one the little toolbox one. That's nice because it's a great way to conceptualize it too. It's like, if you're an educator coming in working with kids and some folks have some behavioral challenges, it's like, okay, what do I got in my toolbox that I can pull out for the situation? Like, ooh, that looks like a behavior specific praise type situation. It's having a toolkit's really nice. And we've also got like access to our open access articles that we just did a special issue in preventing school failure. Our team did, where we put out a bunch of articles about how to do some of these low intensity strategies in home and remote settings. And we've got resources that you can use kind of geared towards educators of like, I want to learn more about instructional choice. You can click open that little accordion, pop it open, download a PowerPoint, and off and away you go. On our COVID tab, we also have like resources for, instructional settings in maybe virtual places, or even for folks at home to look at like, how do I use active supervision with kids at home? What does that look like? And again, continuing to lean into sort of the integrated nature of it. Recall that CI3T, the I stands for integrated. So we do want to consider these three domains as not something we teach sort of in a segmented fashion, but as kids are working together to solve math problems, how are we reinforcing their behavior so they're on task? And how are we recognizing when they use the social skills of respectful conversations and teamwork and empathy and working through frustration? And we want to recognize all those things kind of in one fell swoop, as it were.
So we're going to move into this planning for the coming year. And this came up in our group, and I thought, what a perfect segue, right? How do we think about, yes, closing out this year, really helping kids finish strong and staying fully engaged in learning and feeling like they're in a safe and productive place, and also helping them enter into the summer. And then when we think about coming back for the new year, we have this brand new, fresh opportunity to do things a little bit differently, a little bit better, right? Every year we think, oh, we could do this just a little differently next year. So I think this is one of the benefits of our profession, and so few have this opportunity to reflect and make improvements for the following year. So we are going to talk about a couple of things that we have for you, but both opportunities and resources, and then just some ideas and guidance as you're planning for the coming year. All right, see if I can do this. Okay, so first, an opportunity. We wanted to invite you to join us, if you are interested, in a day of learning on June 24th. And it's a Monday, and you'll see that there are multiple times on here. It is one session, but we wanted to make sure, regardless of what your time zone is, so if you're on Mountain, sorry, you're not on there. But if you're on Pacific, Central, or Eastern, this is the time that you would join us. You can see there's a QR code on this slide, so you're welcome to use that to register. You can also find this on our website. Again, this presentation is available to you on the CI3T website under professional learning, so you can access any of the links or QR codes that way. But this really is a day for you to come either work as your team, or if you are leading the CI3T work in your district as either a coach or a trainer, it could be an opportunity for you to come and think about how you're going to support your schools in their implementation efforts going forward. So you can see from the agenda, we're going to actually preview some of the new enhanced CI3T modules, which I will show you in just a minute, a little quick preview of. Do some planning for the coming year, and also for setting up for that year. You'll also have times to be working in your teams or working with others for your individual planning. So if you're interested, we would invite you to join us. This, you can see this little awesome video clip that Elise made for us. This is the new page that we will be previewing on that day, to show you all of the additional resources and materials that are going to be available for you starting in that late June date and going into next school year. So right now, these materials are under study, and so they are under a password protected place on our website. However, they will be open access for use beginning this summer. So you can see the modules are organized by category. So each one of those little individual pictures, we call them cards. They're like a little book cover, are individual resources that are filled with videos and infographics and information for you to use. And they're organized by information for leadership teams. So those of you talking about onboarding new professionals into your school next year, there's information there for you. What does it mean to be a leadership team? The responsibilities and the roles of everyone within your school are all included as part of that. Then we have primary prevention modules. So if you're implementing Tier 1 with Fidelity, what does that look like? And what are some professional learning resources available? Then we also have secondary or Tier 2 resources, modules available. Tier 3, we also have low intensity strategies that are available. And at the very end, you'll see some that are really just foundational learning of some of the base for CI3T. So that's to build that knowledge and also for prompting really important conversations in your school building as you're implementing. So when you're thinking next about considerations for planning, pre-planning and scheduling all of your meeting structures for the year is really essential. So in order for those meetings to be priorities, we would encourage you to set your schedule of when your leadership team is going to meet each month and when you are going to meet with faculty and staff, so that you can be continuously communicating your priorities around CI3T. You can be supporting data collection efforts. So if you have a new measure coming into your building, maybe around screening, maybe around treatment fidelity or social validity, you want to teach them about that measure, maybe provide some time for them to complete it with some Q&A if needed, and then to come back together at a time where you can share that information back with your faculty and staff. So anything that you are collecting should be shared back with them so they see the importance of how those data are helping to advance what's moving forward in your work in CI3T. That could include student level data, implementation level data, and then it also provides you opportunities to be able to provide professional learning. So when your team is looking at your data, you could identify areas that you want to bolster or strengthen by bringing in a practice. You could look back, as David was saying, like, who are the experts in your building if you've surveyed people around where they feel their strengths are, and actually have them plan some of that professional learning for you. That's a nice way to get everybody involved in your building and everyone to feel like they're contributing in some way. We all want to feel like learners, and we all want to feel like we're experts in something. So it's a really nice way to bring all of that back in. Then you would be thinking about how you're going to organize your professional learning, your data, and so forth all around these meeting times. Oops, see? Click it once. Okay. So when you're thinking about using your spring data, if you have data on your students from screening, if you have any implementation data on the work that you're doing around PBIS or CI3T or other tiered systems, you're looking at that for a really strong ending to the school year. But you're also thinking about how you use that data to help you plan I'm not even going to try. Those syllables are not coming together in my head. But how you're going to preemptively prepare for next year. So what is it that you know, based on what you know from your spring data, that your teachers, your staff, your students, your families might need to know as you're starting your coming year? So you're really looking at how you are implementing the practices that you have planned in your building, and then how students are responding, and keeping in mind in particular that you want to make sure that if you have a plan in place for what you expect students to be engaging in your learning, that it's actually happening. You cannot evaluate student outcomes unless you know that your plan is being implemented with fidelity, as intended. But then you're looking at student outcomes and you're looking for classes or grade levels that might need more support, some at tier 1, those that might be ready for tier 2, and also those in need of tier 3, as David was explaining earlier. Okay, so we know you've seen this once tonight, at least, maybe twice. We're going to share it one more time because we really want you to know where these materials are and what is available. So this is actually one of the things that you could use as a resource for planning for next year as you're welcoming faculty and staff back. So these are all just standalone professional development resources that you can use around different high leverages, high impact research-based practices that we know exist to promote both engagement and learning and minimizing disruptive behaviors in classrooms. So instructional choice is a really powerful one. All of us want to feel like we have some sense of say in the way that our day engages. Kids are so used to being told what to do, when to do it, how to do it, and offering just a little bit of choice actually increases motivation and students' engagement in what's happening in classrooms. So you might want to bring this in for both the end of the year and thinking about how you build in choice in the beginning of next year. So you'll see all the materials are here for your use. In fact, there's also a presentation that you can just download, you can customize if you like, and you can use with your faculty and staff. These are all very brief. You can cover these in about 15 minutes or so. Okay. You also might want to think about, as you're going into summer and concluding the end of the year, how you might engage in one of these book studies as you're planning for the coming year. So there's a couple of books. One is The Supporting Behavior for School Success, has all of the low intensity strategies. The materials for implementation are on the website, but this book might be a way for you to engage in those conversations through PLCs or other ways that you organize your faculty and staff. And again, that open access journal with articles on each of the strategies that talk about various ways to use them, and also ways that families might use them. So if you're working on supporting kids and families over the summer, that might be something that you could use as a resource. And again, that link is available to you on the website. Okay. Then when thinking about how you're going to prepare your planning for your faculty and staff meetings for next year, these are some tips that we would suggest that you could use in thinking about how to always organize that agenda. So it's a nice, predictable format. People know what to expect and can maybe contribute to some of these ideas as well. So really just a 10-minute tip for success. So maybe it's a low intensity strategy. Maybe it's an example of an integrated lesson plan, as David was talking about earlier. So whatever that tip, that strategy, that resource, it might be something to share with families that you want to send home so that they better understand how to support their students' success at school. Then you want to make sure that you're celebrating and you're showing highlights. We need to remember that when we're shifting practices, especially through a system-wide change, we're expecting the adults in our building to do things a little bit differently. And we want to make sure that we're recognizing the efforts that they're putting in to shift those practices, right? So we're asking some teachers to give up some things like maybe individual classroom systems and embrace a school-wide system, because it is better for kids to have something predictable across environments than something different in every classroom, right? But that's something that teachers might really hold dear to them. And so we're asking them to trust us and come together as a team to give up those. So really highlighting the ways that teachers are testing these things out and ways that they are promoting positive outcomes for students. And then always be sharing data. So if data are always the center for discussion, sometimes it removes some of the hard conversations that we need to have, because we allow the data to tell the story and for people to draw conclusions and to see how they might do something a little bit differently, or to share something they're doing that's working really well. So just kind of 3 themes to think about when you're setting up your agenda. This is also a slide that helps us think about when our district or our school is setting up an assessment schedule for exactly the time points from which we can predict data being collected and shared back. So we can use that assessment schedule, and sometimes that's screening information. It might be school-wide information about implementation. It could be state testing information, right? All of those things, regular ways that you look at office discipline referrals or report card data, whatever the indicators are that are important for you. What is the timeline in which you will have those? And then you can kind of backtrack all of your dates to say, we know we're going to have data around these windows, or we know we need time to help support faculty in collecting these data. So let's put those on the calendar, and then let's plan our meetings around those so that we are getting in front of or following behind in terms of sharing data back. So just think about kind of that backwards planning. Okay, so those are the logistics for kind of thinking about setting up for next year. And now I want to talk about some other things that could be a little more fun as you're thinking about kind of rolling out your new year, welcoming students back, and welcoming faculty and staff back. So one of the things we're thinking about is, how do we make sure that we have clarity and what the expectations are, what the resources are, how do we communicate that out through our website to all of our stakeholders so everybody has access to information. Nothing we do at a school is secret, so we want to make sure that we're allowing opportunities for people to grow and learn with us as we adopt shifts in systems. So if you have a CI3T implementation manual, you will see in it, or as you are building it, you will see this procedures for teaching. So this is part of your overall school plan. And when we think about teaching various stakeholders in our school community about our plan, about our expectations, about their roles and responsibilities, we want to think about each of those groups and how we might engage with them. So when we're thinking about faculty and staff, what are the products or pieces, or I'm sure there's a better word for that, posters, materials that they have so that there's reminders, there are teaching tools, and there are prompts for everyone. So in this particular case, right, it's a poster with the expectations for settings, it's plenty of tickets, it's a reinforcement manual, and a copy of the implementation manual. So all of those ways in which we're going to teach. David has created, I think David created this really great scavenger hunt, right? Which we use in our Train the Trainers, but can also be used for schools as you're coming back, and you can, set it up as a game with prizes, make it something that's fun. This is going to be especially important when you have new people joining your faculty and thinking about how you need to make sure that they are learning all the things that have been decided and implemented in the past. Then we think about students, and this is always so much fun. This was what Grant was talking about with being able to sit in the end zone at the football game. And if you're a middle school or an elementary school, work with your high schools. There's lots of great reinforcers with your high school. But we want to think about rolling out with students. We want to teach these expectations. So we do not assume that students know, but we actively teach just like we would reading or math. We can also then think about our families. How do we communicate the information about what the expectations are to our families in a very systematic way so that they understand the school-wide comprehension or comprehensive nature of it? So if I have a child in kindergarten and also in third grade, I know the expectations are the same, and I can support both of my children in a really easy way. Also using your website certainly to communicate that information. Making sure that we have tickets available, teachers know how to use them, and they're being used in a really feasible way. I heard teachers talking the other day about having to fill out the whole ticket, and sometimes they don't do it as often because it takes a lot of time. So that's a great challenge. How can we work around that? I've seen teachers with stamps. I've seen certainly older students filling out their own tickets, and then teachers, stamping it or signature, giving it a signature. But how do we bring the responsibility on students for both completing the ticket and also for managing them? All right, this is the parking spot, and I think this is a view of that end zone, one of the end zone experiences. So you can see the CI3T parking. Is anybody here from a high school? Thumbs up if you're from a high school. No, so no kids are driving to your middle schools or elementary schools. Okay. Because when we're in high schools, we think about those spaces that are close to the building for those of us who prefer quick access to the school. And if you need to get to work after school, some spaces that are right on the outside are near the exit. So kids can exit that building really quickly and get to school on time or get to work on time. Sometimes kids want to win a chance, and sometimes kids want things that are predictable. So thinking about both of those things. And this is what Grant was talking about. So this is a questionnaire that is available to you on the website. And it is a way for you to survey your students to find out what it is that they want to access or avoid in those three categories. So Grant showed you that overall template that you can use to think about this. And this is just a survey that you might use to collect that information. We used to say we're not quite as cool as we think we are. So our understanding of what students might want to be reinforced might not be at all what they are interested in. I'm not sure the teachers would have predicted that TikTok video that students wanted to make, right? So really asking them is important. It allows choice and empowers them to also buy into your system. Okay, so now we're thinking about reinforcing. And we're thinking about reinforcing faculty and staff. Acknowledgements from leadership are really powerful. I know I have every letter a principal ever wrote to me, every note they ever wrote, every little sticky left on my desk that had something positive about what I was doing. I think that we like as educators to be acknowledged for the effort we're making with kids. And so I think, just kind of getting that feedback from your colleagues is really a nice way to reinforce you. And then just also sometimes some tangible things, some drawings, PTAs, PTSOs, PTOs, whatever your acronym is for your parent organization, is a really nice group to get involved in helping celebrate teachers. And then certainly some sort of coverage or pass. It used to be Jean.
So I'm Allison Bernard. I'm a doc student at the University of Kansas and a CI3T research coach, and I will be sharing about how you can establish your professional learning goals. And so this can speak to people who are at the district level or at the school side, or even might be your own personal learning goals, or just setting up for success for the next year as we tend to finish out this year quite strong. So one of the ways that we can do that is by doing some long range planning. And if you're anything like me, if it's not on the calendar, then it's not going to get done. And so as we finish out this year and look to next year, it's helpful to put things on a year-wide calendar, like a year at a glance, and send that out at the beginning of the year. Even if you don't hit all those touch points, it's at least scheduled on your calendar. And it also is effective, not only, like I said, for the school wide system, but it could be for your own professional learning, or someone shared last time about you could use it as your grade band meets, or department if you're at the high school level, to schedule some things out. So as Wendy talked about, you start to gain access to your district's year-long calendar for next year. You might schedule the screening date windows, holidays, faculty meetings, assemblies, just to make sure you're not double booking yourself and giving yourself enough time to maximize when your meeting is going to happen, whether that's a CI3T leadership team meeting or your grade band meeting or faculty meeting, things like that. So you can really maximize that time to prepare for what you're going to discuss at the meeting. We have an editable version of this implementation calendar on the building page of our website. If you'd like to look at that, it has a year-long format. So for example, what you might do is, let's say you have screening the last week of the month. The window closes like maybe on a Friday. And so you might consider scheduling out your leadership team meeting the week following that. And then at that meeting, you might want to write a little note down that you want to discuss how you're going to go through that data with your team and how you're going to share it out with your faculty at the next faculty meeting, and then schedule that faculty meeting maybe the following week. So it's not like too far away from when you got the data and had time to review it. So it's all still really relevant to you. And then lastly, scheduling out some professional learning. You might be interested in learning more about a topic or just wanting to hear from others. And so we have a plethora of opportunities for you to come and access our free resources like we've been talking about. If Kathleen were here right now, she would tell you to get down a pen and a paper and write down this date, June 24, 2024. If you've been to our other session, that's a common phrase. But every single month we have at least one opportunity for you to participate, for you to participate in some sort of professional development. And we would love to see you at any of those. So next year, we have set out our calendar for our next year's Empower sessions. So the links are live on our website and you can sign up now. It has all the topics laid out. So if you're interested in coming to those, we highly suggest you sign up. Additionally, we're going to be changing it up a little bit next year from this format. Well, not this format, how we're teaching you. So we've looked at the evaluations that you filled out each time you've come, and we are so appreciative of that. And you'll get another one tonight. And we would really love for you to complete that. And so we've made a few changes. We've added some more sessions. We're going to have less topics at each of the sessions so we can really dive in deep to cover those for you. And here are the topics. This is what you'll see on our website as well. They have each of the Pacific and Central and Eastern times. Sometimes people will just send a representative or two out from their school so they can come and learn more about a topic and then come back to the school and share those resources. Additionally, we do have a max of 200 people on Zoom. So if you're interested, we would like you to sign up and hold your spot at each of those offerings. And then we also have the trainer and coaches call, which this year has been led by our own Grant Allen, and he will be passing the baton next year to Eric Common, which is exciting. Like David spoke about earlier, these sessions are held from 4 to 5 p.m. Central. They don't have any recordings and they don't have any PowerPoints, and it's really an open mic time to come and workshop and troubleshoot some of the questions or concerns you might be having about implementing or building your CI3T model. So if you'd like to sign up for that, it is also available on our PL tab of our website. And these are the dates of those in just that larger version. It's also on our website in this format, as well as the one on the flyer you saw on the previous page.
Thank you for that discussion. I think it's been some really interesting discussions around ways that we remind ourselves to be intentional about supporting kids, recognizing that both adults and students are getting tired as the year goes on, and then kind of bringing that support around focusing on very particular strategies that can help get us through the end of the school year in a really positive and productive way for everyone. So thank you for those conversations. It's always inspiring for us to hear about how these things are being used in schools that both have CI3T models and those that are implementing other systems or are thinking about implementing systems. And for those of you in Kentucky, you have a really great resource, both certainly on the CI3T.org website, but also David Royer in your own communities. So hopefully you will reach out to him if you have questions or further interest. All right, so we are going to wrap up the session tonight, and we might have a few minutes at the end if anyone would like to actually log in and register for either the summer event or for some of the sessions for next year so that we can just get a sense of, your interest and your planning. You can actually put it on your calendar because, as Allison said, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't happen. And sadly, I can attest to that situation. So you can actually go ahead and put those right on your calendar this evening if you would like to. All right, so as we're moving forward, we want to think about this continuous continuous engagement with professional learning, both for ourselves and for the people that we work with and support within our school buildings and within our districts. We know that once we build these systems, we might build our primary prevention plan, we might bring in reading instruction, and we might bring in systematic screening procedures. And then that moves us into tier 2, and we might have tier 2 interventions that are targeted for the population that we have, and making sure that we as a system are addressing the variety or the variation of our learners. We expect variation in learners. It's a good thing. We want there to be kids with all different kinds of strengths. So when they come together as individuals in our classroom, individuals in communities, and in the workplace, eventually, they're bringing different kinds of expertise with them, where that's what creates really rich, productive groups of people working together to solve big issues. And so we want to think about that as a way that the system accounts for that, and we respond in ways that are appropriate. And then moving into tiered systems, moving into tertiary or tier 3, really making sure that we're using the best evidence that we had. As David said earlier, we don't need a lot of tier 3 supports. We need ones that are really effective for the students that we have. But once you move through those things, you build your system. It's continually learning about the practices to best support your implementation at tier 1, and making sure that your tier 2 and tier 3 interventions shift as new evidence is available and as the needs of your students change, or the priorities in your community change. So we hope that you'll think about this as a constant learning opportunity for yourself. We always invite you to come back and join us in any opportunity that we have. So thank you for the work you're doing, finishing off a great school year with your students and your colleagues, and we hope to see you soon.